What's going on, guys? It's Josh from B-Cut. We just had Mikey England in studio for a solid interview. Listen to it on your car ride home. Listen to it if you're just lounging around chilling. Get to know the guy a little bit better. He's a 4-1 pro with D1 wrestling credentials, but he's got power in his hands. He's a spectacular prospect. Hopefully you enjoy. Here it is.
Breaking news out of the UFC as well as some local talent here. Grant Dawson is booked for a fight. October 2nd versus Diego Ferreira. Gonna be a good one, especially Grant coming off of his last second, like, mind-blowing finish.
Yeah.
Does this fight intrigue you? Obviously it does from Grant's perspective, but just the matchup style itself.
That's your teammate.
Absolutely. I actually was at practice this morning, and he told me that, and I'm like, that's a cool fight. Actually, at first he told me it was Ferreira, and my mind went to Michelle, like Pereira.
That crazy
for some
guy.
reason.
Yeah.
And so at first I was like, all right, good luck.
You're like, that guy does, what is that, like, capoeira?
Yeah, like when he said that, I was like, oh,
Did a
like immediately
backflip.
I was just like, that dude is huge. I'm like, his condition's not that good. So I'm like, all right. I'm like, you got it, dude. And then like my brain started kind of firing. It was early in the morning. I'm like, wait, that's not the right guy. And then I'm like, oh, okay, the guy that just fought Glipsy. I'm like, okay. I'm like, heck yeah. I'm like, that's a badass matchup for Grant. Because
It's top
Glipsy,
15.
yeah, it's top 15. Honestly, it's like, Grant's jiu-jitsu is so good, and then on top of that, I think his wrestling shuts down jiu-jitsu, and so
Cancels it out.
it shuts it. So like his jiu-jitsu is good enough that he's not gonna get caught and stuff, and then his wrestling is so good that he can really smother and blanket like jiu-jitsu guys. So I'm like,
You know about that wrestling.
Just a
little
I
wrestling.
don't know if you ever heard of wrestling before. I think you might have done some of it in the past.
I did a little bit of
Smidge,
it,
just
about
a little bit. You definitely weren't a college wrestler.
20
right?
years,
20 years.
two decades
Good
worth.
God.
Damn. How much? So if you could add up, like, if you could do quick math real quick, do you know how much mat time that you have as far as wrestling?
Man.
Have you ever even thought about it?
No, I have no idea, because I know I didn't really take it too serious until about 6th grade. I had like a cousin by marriage, like, moved in, and he wrestled in college, and he's like, all right, let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah.
And he had a kid. I had like a really good friend who was really into wrestling, so then it's like, just in our little group, I think that year alone I had like 120 matches. That's a six. Like, I went from like,
as a 6th grader?
yeah, and so then like I was getting like my last like 3 years of like before high school, so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I think I was getting over 120 matches a year.
Jesus.
And that's what makes you like such a different kind of MMA fighters, because you knock out people. Like, you have really big power in your hands, but you always have been wrestling for this long period of time. So it's just like, we'll go back to the wrestling. When did you went to Iowa State first and then went to Mizzou? Is that?
Yep, I was in state. I wrestled high school, Iowa, and then when Iowa State was like it was always Iowa versus Iowa State, and I was always Iowa State,
Yeah.
Through and through. And so whenever my coach was like, hey, Chris Bono, who was the assistant coach at the time at Iowa State, he's like, wants you to go on a visit there, and immediately I was like, dude, I'm in. I'm like, all right. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, where do I sign? Like, and so I went up there, and it was super cool. And after 3 years, though, there was like, I was battling out for a spot, to start, and I started most of my 2 years that I was on varsity there, and then for whatever reason at the end of the year, I wasn't the guy. And so then I was like, man, I only got 2 years left of eligibility. So then I took my skills elsewhere, went to Mizzou, and
Not to South Beach, but to Mizzou.
Well, I was
Take my skills to South Beach.
right. I was looking. It was kind of cool to go through the recruiting process again.
Yeah.
As like a junior, it's like, all right, I already went through this once. I kind of know how it goes. I'm like, all right. And so I
Your
went.
credential level was already a lot higher then, so it's almost like re-recruiting now that you're powered up. Almost, you added some power ups and everything to the repertoire. Like, okay, now who wants me? Because I'm a free agent.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was. it felt good a little bit. I had a lot of coaches reaching out to me. I'm like, okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is cool.
It happens a lot in college now. Like, people are transferring, but what was it like, how long ago was that?
So that would have been 2013.
14, yeah.
And then I wrestled at Mizzou for 14 and 15. But now
Okay.
they have the transfer portal.
The portal,
So
you can
now
just-
it's like it's a lot easier. Before I had to
Did you have to sit out a year?
I didn't because Mizzou actually just moved out of the Big 12 to the SEC, which took them out of our conference, and then also took them off the schedule. So it's like my rules were I couldn't go in state, I couldn't go anyone on the schedule, and I couldn't go anyone in conference.
And that just happened.
And
to be
so
the
I'm
Magic.
like,
Well, and at that time,
Perfect.
who else was on? Let's see.
You didn't want to wrestle that guy
13.
from Iowa State that had the spot?
we ended up wrestling a couple times, and
You did?
I think we ended up going 500 with each other.
Okay.
But
That's awesome.
it's
Who was it? Can we say his name? What's his?
yeah, it was Tanner Weatherman.
Tanner Weatherman.
And yeah, I've been battling the Weathermans my whole life. They because there was Tanner, and then there was Trent, and then they had a cousin Brock, and I wrestled all of them like a bunch of times, and I ended up wrestling like Brock, their cousin, in both my state finals and like as a freshman. You know, so I was
So you
battling.
had a long history
Uh-huh.
with that.
And it's hilarious
Weathermans.
because then I got to Iowa State and I ended up becoming buddies with all of them,
Oh,
and
nice.
like we
You saw him
hung
like
out.
first day on campus. You're like, the damn Weathermans.
Like those guys.
You're like, oh, they're cool.
Like, why you have to be so good at wrestling?
So when you moved to Mizzou, I guess, did they court you, or did you kind of go to them first?
I kind of I sent out a couple emails to schools that I was interested in, just saying hey, I was interested, and like immediately Coach Smith called me probably like 10 minutes later, and like just like him getting right on top of it and like showing interest right away. I'm like, okay.
You like that?
And they just got done like finishing like second in national duels, like had a really good national tournament, and then also was missing a guy. Like they just graduated a guy at 174, which was my weight class. So I'm
Perfect.
like, and it was closer to home than Ames. Like,
Of course, yeah.
like my home is actually it's a shorter drive to Columbia, Missouri than it was to Ames,
Are you
Iowa.
more? I guess where were you? Because we just took a trip. I guess we took a trip to Omaha for the College World Series last Monday, but we drove through Iowa, and I didn't realize how close this little corner of Iowa was to.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was like 2 hours. Away.
Missouri?
I was like, what the? Yeah, and then so we like crossed to Missouri and Iowa. So were you down more towards the
So-
left-hand corner? Or?
So I'm in the closer to the right hand corner, but
Okay.
I'm like, Kirksville, Missouri.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like right on the other side of the border,
Okay,
north of
gotcha.
Kirksville, right over
Okay.
there. Mm-hmm.
So when you got to Mizzou, then who was kind of the big? Was Jaden Cox there at the time?
He just got there. He was a freshman when I got there.
Okay.
And,
So who was like the big dog on campus at that point, or was it you?
Which
Did
I
you
mean,
walk in?
Jaden, what coming out of high school is still a big dog.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever lost a high school match.
He actually his very last loss in high school was to me.
Oh my
There you
God,
go, baby.
that's crazy.
Let's go.
I was a senior. He was a freshman, and my coach
Wow.
was like, I was senior, undefeated at the time, and like I got second at state the year before, lost in overtime, and I was just like, I'm like, nothing's stopping me this year. Like I was locked
On a
in,
mission.
right? And my coach was like, we went to the Lee Summit tournament here,
Uh-huh.
like the Christmas tournament, and my coach was like, hey, just to let you know, this kid's won every little kid's thing there is out there, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, kid stuff? I'm like,
Kids thing. He's a
yeah, I'm like,
15-year-old.
I'm like, who gives a shit? I'm like, this kid, I'm like, this.
17. I'm basically a man.
Yeah, exactly, right? I go out there, he takes me down 2 times in 30 seconds. I was like, oh, shit.
Is it okay?
I'm like, oh, we're in a match here, all right. And I ended up, like, kind of, I don't know, veteran, like, kind of using my experience
the
a little
rules,
bit,
yeah.
kind of, and I ended up beating him like an 11-10 match, like in the barn burner.
Damn, that's
That's
close.
But I was like, damn, I'm like, that kid was good. And then, like, I just didn't pay attention. All of a sudden, I saw him, like, a few years later, and he's like,
Oh,
like
God.
that was at 171,
Olympian.
and I see him now, and he's like 225, like, looks like built like Superman and shit. I'm like, oh, man. I'm like,
So you beat him when he was a freshman?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
And it's hilarious now because like my mom, it's just a mom thing. It's like every time he accomplishes something, she acts like I accomplished that.
Of course, that's
So
how it
it's
works.
like-
That's how it
And
works.
so like I got like a little like group chat like with my like cousins and brothers and stuff, and every time he wins something, they're like, "Congrats, Mikey! You won another world title. You won another like." And it's a funny little inside joke.
You clearly could have done it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm like, have you seen? I'm like, when I got the Mizzou, dude, he was like 235 and just jacked, and like I was still like the same weight as when I wrestled him. I was just like,
174. You're like,
yeah, I was like, I'm coming, peace, dude. Don't kill me, please.
Where'd you go to high school at?
Centerville High School.
That's kind of local, right?
It's like. I mean, it's over by, like, Kirksville, and it's...
Okay.
We're right on... Like, we wrestled a lot of Missouri teams, so I've kind of been...
Because I know, yeah, one of my childhood buddies, shout out Austin Evler. He's a big guy of yours, so...
I know Evler.
He went to my high school, and I was getting at, like, what brought you to Kansas City, what brought you to Lee Summit, and Glory. I'm always curious at every guy in that gym of how they kind of just started training there. And
How do you end up in Lee Summit, Missouri? Kansas City, really, but Lee Summit, Missouri.
I graduated college, took an estimator job for a pavement company in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and then when I was down there, my roommate from Iowa State was making bank, doing refinances for Wells Fargo in Des Moines, and so then I'm like, well, let me get on that train.
Yeah.
And so then I end up getting hired on with Wells Fargo in Des Moines. And then I hated that job. It was like headset. You're like dialing the phone like 40, 50 calls a day. And it was like super high pressure sales. Like I'd like do like, and one, I got the job not even knowing what a mortgage was.
Yeah.
And I was like,
How'd
wait,
they
what?
hire you? Would you fake it till you make it, or?
I mean, yeah,
I just
Did you look up
got a degree.
insurance terms for dummies, or?
I would just, I usually do pretty well in the interview process. You just gotta, like you said, fake it till you make it. You know.
Just assume, just act like you know what you're doing. You know how many times I've done that, and like I'm like, I can't believe they called me back.
Oh, I couldn't believe I got the job, and they didn't really do a very good job. It was a very sink or swim thing too. So then I got this job, and they gave me like a week to like train, and then you're on the phone, and so I'm talking to people about their mortgages for like their $400,000 homes, and I'm like, every time like they say something, I'm like, oh yeah, let me check this. I'd push pause. I'm like, somebody please help me. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here.
Like a different intensity. Then.
Oh yeah, I was drowning, and
go ahead.
Oh yeah, so then I ended up making some money, like in fresh out of college. I never had money, so I ended up making some money in like 6 months and quit that. And I was dating a girl in Kansas City, moved down here. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We're no longer together, but it got me to Kansas.
Got you to
got me to Kansas
crazy.
City, and then
she was useful for a minute.
yeah. Got me down here, and
Does that sound bad?
Yeah.
it was cool.
She helped you with your ultimate goal. You got here.
Exactly.
Brought you here, and then you're like, I want to do MMA, like start.
Yeah, I started going. I just knew I needed something. I was like still going to the gym. I'm like doing sprints on like the treadmill, just being like a kind of a psychopath in the gym. And I'm at like Anytime Fitness, just like sweating all over and just like mean and I'm like I need to do something.
You look like the kind of guy they would kick out of Planet Fitness.
Yeah. Probably happened once or twice.
No, you turn into the maniac in the cage.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean,
sense.
the maniac got it was a nickname that started kind of in high school, then stuck in college, and so like it's always kind of been there. And
did the kids call you that, or did the teachers call you that?
No, it was my friends. It kind of started. It started off as like a joke, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I kind of like it.
Kind of cool name. Now, it's
original.
Would
Yeah,
you
it's
rather
awesome.
go Mikey Maniac England or the Maniac Mikey England?
So I think if I was to really be detail oriented, I would know just Maniac Mikey England.
Okay, gotcha.
We were talking about it before the show. I was like, I don't think there's
he's
a
like,
the.
there's no the. And
I don't
was
think
like,
there's
okay.
the. It's just Maniac.
But
This was
but
on the
it's gonna
shirts and
happen.
stuff.
I understand. It's
Yeah.
gonna, people are gonna be, oh, the maniac, or
Because if you're
Like,
not-
no, I'm just a maniac.
Yeah,
You
I,
mad?
Maniac, dude.
I can't correct him every time.
No.
But yeah, I was way too intense for Anytime Fitness, and so I'm like, I need to figure something out, and I started doing jiu-jitsu because I'm like, that'll be like an easy crossover. Then
What got you? I guess what made you choose the jiu-jitsu side? Because you wanted to. Was it something you were like, I'm sort of familiar, but I'm pretty novice still? Because you're obviously familiar, and I always talk about this with wrestlers or anybody who does wrestling, how easily it translates to other sports. Because I think once you're aware of how your body operates,
I don't know. Have you ever seen wrestlers like try to play a ball sport? It's it's
Well,
it's
okay,
tough.
I
It's
do-
tough. It's tough
I've
to
seen
watch
wrestlers try to
sometimes.
play basketball, and that's an ugly sight. Like that's not cool. But like usually it translates really well to football, in my opinion. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because you understand your body in contact with somebody else, like how your body moves, how just how your body operates within space. You know what I mean? Like Conor McGregor
Leverage,
talks about it.
hand
Yeah.
fighting. I was actually a lineman in high school.
Yeah. See, there you
And,
go.
like,
Wrestlers
I
make
was-
great linemen.
I
Hand
mean,
placement.
yeah, and I was 170 pounds as a right guard,
Just
but
you
it's
had a
like,
team.
but yeah, I could
know.
move people around, but no, I picked jiu-jitsu just because I thought it was an easy crossover, it was
Yeah.
easy transition, and it really was. I
Still
kind
grappling.
I just kind of learned a few. I like keep both arms in or both arms out. It keeps you from getting arm barred, triangled,
Yeah.
and then you get choked out a few times. You kind of figure out what to do, and then it's like then the rest of it's like how to take people down. You know how to sit on top of them. That's why I call my jiu-jitsu sit on top of you jiu-jitsu. I just sit on top.
of jiu-jitsu.
It wins. Gets you the points.
Is it weird getting choked out like for the first time, like in that kind of setting when somebody's truly trying to do it, like while you're trying to prevent it? I mean, like we're degenerate kids. I used to play the.
Well, I don't know. My roommate's in jiu-jitsu, and he's a white belt, but he says he'll just hold on to it like a little bit longer than after they tap. Like there's people that train like that, I'm sure. Don't they? Like they just hold on to the choke a little bit longer than after the tap, and it's just.
I feel like that's
I think it's
Well, that's what he does. I mean,
Damn.
that's what he does. I mean,
I think it's a courtesy thing. Like people tap, you just kind of let it
Yeah.
go. And
That's
you
what I would
As you
think.
kind of start to do it more, you kind of understand when people are like the positions where people
Mhm.
are probably gonna tap and stuff, and you can kind of. I don't know. I try not to be an asshole like
That's
whenever
good.
I'm doing stuff, but almost to a fault a little bit. Like sometimes I'm like, I get done with practice, I'm like, dude, you just be a little more mean. Like you gotta.
it's only on guys that he's not, a fan of. But like, did you go with Trey or did you go with who was your jiu-jitsu coach when you started?
So I actually started up north with Zach Cummings.
With Zach Cummings. That's
Mhm.
okay. I should
We
have
talked
mentioned
about it
him.
before.
He's
Yeah.
got Glory Northland,
Yeah.
and he's a decorated UFC fighter.
Oh man,
Big time.
He's a badass. Like it was one of those things where like, I went in and right away like I could wrestle. Like he's been out of wrestling for a little bit and stuff, so I could like wrestle him and everything. But then I'm like I started watching like MMA practice. I'm like I think I can do that. I think I can beat those guys. And then like even Zach, like he's kind of a guy who you look at and I'm like. You kind of size him up, and I'm like, man, I'm so glad I never met Zach like on the streets or anything, because I'm like, I would have totally underestimated that guy, and he would have whooped my ass. Because then I like did like the stand up, and I thought I knew a little stand up and stuff, but I'm like, oh, there's levels to this
Levels
shit.
to
Like,
this shit.
like he, I could hold my own like the wrestling and stuff, but it's like when I started doing like stand up, I'm like, man, I'm like that guy's good.
He's nasty.
He's good.
Yeah, I guess again that's another thing. It's people think of Kansas City MMA coaches. There's James Krause, but there's also Zach Cummings,
Yeah.
who is almost equally as smart and decorated, and he's just not like a social media, I guess. But he deserves so much credit for the growth of MMA in this sport, in this area for sure.
Oh man, if you look at like I know just like my immediate there's even so much like Kansas City like history with MMA that I don't even know, because I mean I've only been here for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of learning it, but it's like just between like Zach Cummings and James Krause and Jason High, who
Yeah.
are kind of like I'm around a lot. I'm like, man, I'm like those dudes. I've gone back and watched like all their fights on the UFC Fight Pass and stuff, and like Jason.
Isn't that great, by the way?
Oh
UFC
my
Fight
gosh.
Pass is killer.
like I just watched Zach versus Santiago Ponzinibbio the other day.
Wow.
And I'm like, Jesus, that was a knockdown, drag out war. And and it's just like, man, here's this guy who like started coaching me, and he's out there fighting like this Argentina, who's like one of the best in the world, you know.
Fantastic record. Like,
and then
3 losses.
then like Jason Hyde, like I just watched him versus like Rafael dos Anjos the other day, you know, and then of course James has like an incredible I think I just watched him and Jorge Masvidal the other day, you know.
Well,
And he fought Cowboy Cerrone too, which is
I
decorated
do think
guy.
it's funny how, you know, maybe other people outside of this area might not consider those names that big, but when you look at the guys that they have faced and the experience that they've had on some of the biggest stages in the world, it gives a lot of credit to the MMA scene and the mixed martial arts scene here in Kansas City, and especially with, you know, obviously I would say the top right now, especially with the at least the marketing and social media side, would be Glory MMA with you guys over there at Glory. And I think it's funny that when you look at the crowd, so obviously you have a pretty big fan base of people that follow you, not only from Iowa, but from people that have kind of glommed on to your kind of persona here, the Maniac in Kansas City. But Kansas City as a fan base, not even as a training ground, but as a community that, I mean, there are people all over Kansas City that I never knew how big the fan mania was for not only MMA, but also like, you know, like WWE, things like that. Like, the people in Kansas City, more of a blue collar thing, love dudes who can fight, not just boxing. Boxing has a good history here as well. Speaking of, I'm going to
I bet Iowa's like that
the
too.
Golden Gloves event here on Saturday in Kansas City. They just really care about Slipknot and Korn is what Iowa cares about.
And Bush Light.
And Bush Light. Hey, don't get me wrong.
Shout out to my
I like all 3 of those.
Slipknot. God, I mean, let's take it to your professional debut. You were sleeping dudes on the amateur scene. You go for your professional fight, and now being around guys like Isaac and Gage and watching them fight. I didn't get to watch your professional debut, so I just can't imagine. I can kind of imagine what you're feeling now before the fight. Probably, you know, just this is for real. This sticks with me. And you absolutely obliterated Johnny Pantoja. Like, can you take us back to that moment and that specific fight and what was going through your mind? This is your professional debut.
Absolutely.
18 seconds.
Quick fight.
Yeah, that was like best case scenario, you know. It's like I go into every fight expecting like, all right, this is gonna be 15 minutes of hell. I'm ready for war. Like I always expect the worst and, you know, hope for the best, obviously. But it's like you gotta expect the worst because it's like you go out there and, you know, you don't knock him out right away, and you're thinking like I've seen guys like where they think they're going to put a guy away, and then the guy's stingy, sticks around and stuff, and then, you know, they lose steam, like, all of a sudden, and then end up losing to the guy that they should have beaten. It's like, I never want that to happen to me, so I go into every fight like, all right, I'm going to war for 15 minutes. And then, like, in that fight, all I remember is, like, he came out right away swinging, like, all right, just back away, stay safe. And then he did it again, and then eventually I was just like, oh, man, you gotta make him respect you. And I just threw a right hand and then followed that right into like a little
clean. I think you knocked him.
We'll
out
throw
with
that in there
with that first right. I think you stunned him so hard on the first right hand he didn't feel you even.
I think so. And it was one of those things where did you guys play baseball?
Yeah.
You guys a baseball fan? You know when you just clean.
You don't feel it.
Home run. Yeah, you know you hit it, but it doesn't feel like anything.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Really?
It was just like, I was like, oh man, I hit him good, but I'm like, who knows, you know? So I went for the body lock and stuff, and then, you know, luckily.
I think you almost got him above your head because when you grabbed
beautiful.
him and you picked him, his hips almost went above your whole head, and then that pile drive was just, I mean, that was, the ref was like, this is already over. I don't even need to, like, see you hit the ground.
No.
It was funny because I'd never watched that fight before until probably like a couple months ago, but I remember John O'Brien, one of your teammates, was fighting him, and they were like, Mikey obliterated that guy. I was like, I haven't seen this. So I went to YouTube. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, it was brutal.
And
man.
that was just, you know, we're in well, shoot, now we're in June of 2021, but I'm like, that was just last year, you know.
Last year.
And that's what I was like thinking. About my career, I'm thinking about this, that, you know, and then I started kind of sitting back. I'm like, dude, you really don't have very much cage time. I'm like, you just fought. So it's like that was in January of 2020, and then it's like my second fight wasn't even a year ago, you know. Like it was my second pro fight was in August of 2020. So it's like
5 in a year and a half.
That was
A year, 5 in a year and a half.
There was Travis. There's Travis Ford.
Time, I feel like, maybe it's a little bit. Maybe typically things do tend to go a little faster on the kind of not the amateur but the lower professional circuit. I guess that's still in a year and a half. That's still a solid amount of fights, like 4-1, 5 fights.
And we had a pandemic in there, and I broke my hand and had to have surgery in there. So it's like that's what I was like. Like now I'm kind of like taking a little break for the summer and stuff, but like I was, you know, which is kind of weird, but at the same time I'm like, man, I'm like you're always like almost like cramming for a test.
Yeah.
It felt like
always getting it in, kind of rolling.
Well, yeah, that's like with the pandemic, I didn't know when the fight was going to happen, so it was just like, all right, it's happening next month. So like you hurry, get ready, and then like, it's not happening this month. And then it's like, all right, it's happening next month. And so like that happened like 1 or 2 times. So then, you know, I finally got that, and I'm like, well, give me another one. And then broke my hand in that fight.
Where were you? I guess was that the what fight did you break your hand in?
Sean Scott.
Okay. Now, do you know exactly when in the fight you broke
Oh,
your
yeah.
hand? What did you do? When was it?
It was so I knocked him down, and he was kind of on all fours. And then it's so funny because like the things you do in practice come out in like whether it's intentional or it's not. But the things you do in practice come out. And a lot of times, if I have people down like kind of like almost all fours or referee's position, instead of being an asshole in practice and like really like, you know, I kind of just like fake punch him, but like I was doing it kind of wrong, and then like in the fight all of a sudden he was there and I was like punching him like that, and I just
the top of your hand.
Yeah, well it's kind of like I don't know, but yeah,
like
basically almost like
shot.
that. And he like turned his head and I just skipped it right off the top of his head, and it shattered my whole like metacarpal and or metacarpal, I believe is.
We're not doctors, don't
We're
worry.
not, but
I tried to be one. It didn't work out.
Right. and that's how we got here.
And that's why we're here. Yeah. I was originally going to be a physical therapist, and like the second day in college at Austin Peay State, I was like, yeah, fuck this shit. I'm out. Like, and then I got into sport broadcasting. So.
Well, I was going to be an engineer at Iowa State, and you know, like one just with the wrestling schedule was crazy, and then like being in like a engineering like program, and then I was like coming home like every night at like 11 o'clock at night, just have to like get up at 5 a.m. to go lift, and there's like my roommate and like my 2 like dorm like mates like who are in like the business school like just playing Call of Duty. They're like, oh yeah, we didn't even have class today. It got canceled. And I'm like,
what'd you guys do all day?
Damn it.
I played video games.
Yeah, and so like second semester, I'm like, I want to be in business. I'm like, I might forget this stuff.
Yeah, right?
I mean, engineers, they're in like NASA and shit. Like that's it's a tough committee.
That's not my league, but that's not what you do. We were talking to Jeff. So we were talking to Jeff Molina. He was our first guest we ever had in the studio, which has been awesome. He talked about just kind of the craziness of MMA, and it's like he said it was just an odd job when you really think about it. He's like, my job in the morning is I get up and I go fight my friends at practice.
And it's so fun though.
Yeah,
it's so fun though.
It was just like when you tell somebody what you're like. If you were from like a just a foreign country who had no professional fighting at all, which is I guess probably rarer than people probably fight all over. But like you explained what your job, like what do you do for a living? I wake up and fight people.
Mm-hmm.
Like
fight my friends.
Just is a crazy experience to like explain to people.
Well, and so like both my roommates fight too, and so it's like. So, like, on the weekend, like, let's say Sunday when the gym's closed or Friday night when there's nothing, it's like, we'll just go to the gym and fight each other.
Oh, I was like, did they just throw the mat out in the living room and just, all right, let's get at it?
Every single night,
thought, yeah.
we call it kitchen mitts. Every single night, like, usually we start, like, like, hey, like we worked on this today. Then it just slowly turns into a little sparring match. One person usually has a phone, the other two are going at it. And,
Next time you're gonna have like boiling hot water, and he's just gonna be like, "I learned that in practice today." And you're like, you got me, and then you're gonna keep going.
You're gonna bring in a sack of wrenches next time. You're like, all right, boys.
Gonna throw like a ninja star at him, be like, "I learned that today." And he's like, "Hey, you got a good one right there." And he's gonna keep going.
Come in with the nunchucks.
But yeah, it's like as like, you know, like for it to be your job to just go fight your friends, it's actually it sounds crazy, but I'm like, dude, I honestly like it's like I couldn't do anything else. Like I had other jobs. I've done like manual labor. I've done like the finance work. I've done all. I'm like, oh, it's not. But I'm like, this stuff I can do. I can go fight my friends every day.
So did you ever? I guess when you were wrestling in college, was this ever something that you had entertained at all, or was this something that kind of spurred of a moment from that jiu-jitsu practice that you did?
So honestly, my whole life, I expected to do this. Like as a child, like growing up, I was so obsessed with UFC, with Matt Hughes and Chuck Liddell, and actually back then my favorite fighter was BJ Penn because he beat he beat Matt Hughes, and he had a couple other like super sick highlight knockouts and stuff. I'm like, that dude's a beast. But no, I thought that and then it's like I was kind of notorious in high school. Like we would host fights on the weekends with each other and stuff.
You had a backyard fight.
We had a little fight club. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us.
I had a friend. Shout out Garrett Brown. He made me watch the movie Fight Club in like 5th or 6th grade, and I watched it, and I was like, oh man. I'm like, okay. I'm like,
it's on Netflix.
And then and then junior high rolled around, and you know there's kind of like the kids that played sports, there's the kids that didn't, kind of troublemakers, and then it just kind of like there was always kind of like this, like who's tougher, and then finally I was just like, we can just find out, like we'll just I'm like, we can just set this up and we can figure. And it's hilarious because like it brought all of us together. We all ended up becoming like super close. I was friends with everybody, whether they played sports, didn't, stayed in school, didn't stay in school. But it's like because we fought each other, it's like it made us better friends. And we'd set it up on the weekends, and we'd go out to like a campground like by the lake, or we'd find somewhere like kind of obscure. And we'd be like, all right, this person with this person, this person with this person. And
so was it like tournament bracket style, or was it just like we're doing one fight each, or did you guys do multiple fights?
It was kind of
like, this weekend I'm fighting Tommy, man, kick his ass.
That's kind of how it was. We kind of had like a tournament little setup to kind of figure out. But we like my class was kind of crazy. We did it on like the football, like we'd have like freshman football games, and then they'd have like the varsity game. Like we'd fight each other on the bus. Like the varsity game would be going on, and we'd be like, all right, John and Garrett, you go. And like they just and we'd all be like, we'd be in like the bus driver. I don't know where he was at, but we were unmonitored, and we would be sitting in the seats, and they'd just be in the middle aisle trying to duke it out.
Garrett Brown's a businessman. It sounds like a promoter.
Oh man, he could too. He's such a good talker and everything.
He sold it. He beefed it up a little bit.
Oh yeah, he's the man.
So you had that fighting experience a little bit, you know.
I just loved it. And then I got into college, and then I had some shithead friends, and that we'd go out and stuff, and I had a lot of friends that weren't on the wrestling team. Just how it happened, and they were all super fun, rambunctious stuff, but they always like started fights, and then I'm like, but it was cool for me because I'm like, well, I love this shit, so let's do it.
I'm sure a lot of athletes like have that same experience, like in college, like college wrestlers and things like that. So
definitely the college wrestlers.
My grandpa always said, "You're not a man until you've punched somebody in the face and you've been punched in the face."
Well,
I was like, that sounds like sound logic.
There's a little quote from Fight Club actually, where it's like, what do you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? You know.
It's true. Well, I've never been in one, so.
Well, that's weird because We can do it right now. You're sitting next to one of the best, baby.
Got gloves in the car. No.
Fuck the gloves. We'll just do it right here. You got to take a roof fist to the face.
We'll stand on the table. We'll stand on the table.
There we go.
There we go.
Let's move all this equipment around.
I got a question for you. I asked Isaac this same question, and it applies to you. Like, you're on the trajectory, like your record and everything, UFC bound. Like your finishing ability, your entertainment value, everything you bring, you're on the right track. Have you ever considered fighting in a different organization other than FAC, or are you a straight? Because FAC can get you to the UFC, 100%. We've seen it happen with Kevin, Jeff, and I think I'm missing somebody, but Kevin and Jeff for sure. Are you going to stick with the FAC, or have you thought about maybe a potential travel aspect to your camp, like maybe an LFA, you go to Kansas, or a Cage Fury, you go to Philadelphia, Fury Fighting? Your last opponent, Brian McDowell, just took a fight in Miami, Florida.
Oh,
so
I was wondering what that guy was up to. After our fight, I'm like, that guy's kind of a cool guy. But I'm extremely loyal to Joe Wooster, and he helps run the FAC, and I talk to Joe a lot. He's a really cool dude, and so I kind of have come to understand like the promoter side of things and stuff, and so. He was just telling me one day, he's like, we get these fighters and stuff that come and fight on our show, and then it's like immediately after our show, they'll have hundreds of other organizations like emailing him like, hey, come fight for us. And he's like, so it's like, he says that basically he's like, we get fighters in and we want to build them, build our organization, build them as a fighter, because it looks good for them to have people who fight for them and then go on to fight in the UFC and stuff. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so then it's like they've treated me so well and stuff that, I want them to get whatever return, off of me, to go to them.
Especially because they gave you the original kind of the hand, not the handout, but they extended the hand and say, hey, we would like to.
The opportunity, the eyes, they got me on UFC Fight Pass. They're doing all this stuff for me. They're not just throwing me in. They're like, hey, this is Jason High, who's a UFC vet. It's like, you're a good up and comer. You're 2-0. Go fight. And it's like they're not doing shit like that either.
It's not like a parking lot. What do they call those?
No, I mean FAC is a fantastic organization.
Oh yeah.
Compared to the other like Cage Fury, FAC, you've got UFC vets and you have up and comers alike and amateurs. Right here in Kansas City. So, and then the next one's July 30th. You have Chance for Encounter, former UFC fighter, and then he's fighting Jake Lindsay.
Yeah, and
put it on Jason High for a little bit, and then Jason High had one of the coolest moments I've ever seen in person.
Winners win. Yeah, but I'm not opposed to fighting for other organizations. So it's like I am extremely loyal. But I wouldn't mind going to enemy territory and fighting. I wouldn't mind going to like traveling and like having to deal with like the some of the difficulties that come with traveling, going somewhere else. It's like, cause then it's like, it's a different, scheduling, you got to stay in a hotel. You're not staying in your bed, Honestly, I think I would like that. I think I'd like that more because it kind of makes it more of an event.
Like a business trip.
When I'm like for the FACs and stuff, like sometimes it's kind of like, oh, this same song and dance, which that's just kind of So that's just kind of like some mental stuff that you have to deal with. But it's like I would like to go to enemy territory and fight someone in their hometown, just to get that experience. And like I think it just adds a little different element to it.
Is there any that you've looked into that would even be worth, like, is there any, like kind of he listed off a name of a litany of people that, is there anything that you've already looked into, or is it just like, hey, I'm open, I haven't really done much research into any of these other organizations, but or is there anything you're looking at?
Well, so I got a management company, and then my manager is Joe Wooster.
Iridium.
There you go.
And so I kind of just put that responsibility onto him.
Okay.
And so right now, we're not getting too complicated with things, but I was 4-0 heading into my last fight. I lost, and so now I'm 4-1, and so I think that's gonna kind of prolong the journey a little bit. which is good. I think it's actually. I mean, obviously, it's like I don't want to lose. That fucking sucked.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about this because we were at that fight, and obviously we were pulling for you.
Mm-hmm.
It looked in the fight, and we are not professionals by any means, but it looked like he somehow kind of surprised you with one of the hits. Is that the case, or was it just more like when he? Because obviously the way it went down, you guys kind of got into a tussle, and then he was able to take your back and everything. But like, was there anything in that fight that surprised you, or was that more on too much comfortability? I know we're getting into a little more personal waters here, but
oh man, he fucking cracked me. Is what happened.
He
cracked me. Is what happened.
Like you were surprised.
It wasn't a surprise. I think I just like I was kind of mentioning with doing the same song and dance. One, it's like that was an opponent change like less than a week.
Like 4 days.
So, like I was preparing for a whole nother guy.
True.
And then I got this guy, which it was kind of like whatever.
It's Chell Irwin Davis, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
that's who I originally had, and then it got changed to this new guy, and it didn't. That's whatever. Like that happens all the time, and
part of the game.
But it was kind of like I was going, like I've done the FAC several times, and so like maybe I just felt like I was a little bit too in the moment, like I feel like. After that, I was kind of like, all right, I think I need to be at a little bit heightened state and a little bit more. I think I was just like a little bit too calm.
Okay.
I think I needed to be at a little bit more of a heightened state and a little bit more of this kind of like ready to really like get after it. Yeah.
Maniacal.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I and I mean, who knows? Because like he hit me with the first shot he threw,
Yeah.
and like hit me hard. Like he got me good. So it's like who knows? And it's like maybe it's like if I I felt him almost come off of my neck whenever I kind of shook him off.
Yeah.
And it's like who knows where the fight would have gone after that and stuff. But it is what it is. But. And it sucks. Like obviously, like it was. It's humiliating. You go through so much shit whenever you lose. Like it's humiliating. Like it's heavy. It's all this stuff. Like, I had all the people that were there. It didn't seem like there was too many people there because it's like COVID. But it's like seemed like all the people that were there for me. And then it was just kind of like the fight got done, and I'm like, man, you can hear crickets in here, like and all that, but. And so it's like there's that stuff, but when I look at it, I'm like, it's actually I think a good thing because I'm like I really don't have much cage time.
You said it earlier, you're so new to the game. You're kind of fast tracked.
Yeah, all my fights have been first round, and so it's like I really don't have a lot of cage time, and so it's like I think that's gonna kind of prolong my journey a little bit, but I think that'll be good in the long run because then it's like by the time I get to the UFC. I want to be ready. I want to be competing, and I don't want to just make it to the UFC. And then, I've seen guys like college wrestlers, that I've wrestled before, go in there at like 4-0, 5-0, and then like kind of had like an embarrassing like performance, and now they're out of the UFC. It's like that was their shot.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have happened to me, but it's like now I really get to level up. I get more cage time. I want to be comfortable before I get to that level.
There's that like silver lining in everything, and I feel like that's going to be only a good thing for your career moving forward from this. And I think like July 30th, you said you're taking the summer off, so you're not going to make an appearance on FAC number 9.
Correct. I think we're shooting for October.
Okay.
Like I think that's when the next FAC after this July one's gonna be.
You gotta enjoy your time off.
And I actually I'll give a little plug to Stalemates.
Stand up for the camera.
Where's it? You can see it.
It's right here.
There it is, right there.
Yeah. So Stalemates is this wrestling podcast that my cousin started, and he does it with a family friend of ours, and it's an awesome podcast, and they're hosting a street league. They're calling it Stalemate Street League, and they're having like basically former wrestlers, ex-wrestlers, and they're matching them up, putting them on like a card, and then they got a headliner with 2 big ex-college wrestlers who
That's dope.
and so they're hosting that up in Des Moines like the same time as like the state fair, and they're like doing it
Are
big.
they doing it at the state fair?
They're not doing it at the state fair, but they're doing it downtown, like where all the bars and stuff are at.
Okay.
So like,
is it inside or outside?
it's inside,
Okay.
but I think I'm not entirely sure, but I'm super stoked for that. So I'm coming out of wrestling retirement to wrestle.
Hell yeah,
That's awesome.
Man. That'll be cool.
And,
So when is this?
It's August 13th,
Okay.
I believe,
Let's mark that on my calendar.
and
That would be cool.
I think
to document.
I think I saw on your story you posted something about stalemates, and I went and checked out their stuff. And they've been doing it for like a year now or something.
it was actually last year,
1 year
right when the
anniversary?
pandemic started. Me and them, the guys that do it, were heading to NCAA Nationals, and then it got canceled like literally 2 days before.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, shit, we all have vacation. So then we just headed out to Colorado, bought a cabin in the woods, and then it freaking snowed like 14 inches the first day we were there. So we couldn't even leave. But my cousin like just bought all his podcast stuff, and so we kind of did a couple mock podcasts and everything, and then they just started rolling with it. And then after like they made a couple memes that kind of went viral, got like thousands of likes on Twitter and stuff, and that got them the audience, and now they're just rolling with it.
That's so
That's
cool.
killer, man.
And they don't just do podcasts, do they? They do like, like full on vlogs of the events and stuff.
So they do a podcast, and then they do memes, they do satire. They kind of got big also because they were making highlight films for like high school and college wrestlers.
Oh, really?
And so
They're almost like almost a promotion agency as well.
yeah,
Promotion company.
they were doing it. They were grinding hard, and I'm not like really involved with it, but like I for a while there, I was calling my cousin, or he was calling me, like FaceTiming like every week, a couple times a week, and we were just talking wrestling, and it started rolling on, and then he came up with the Street League.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be fun.
That's cool.
I already got, like, the guy who I'm wrestling is he's like I think he's a 2-time national champ for JUCO. So he wrestled for Grandview, and I actually know the dude pretty well, but I'm excited to start doing some of the promo videos for it, and like I'm already like thinking about my walkout and stuff. I'm gonna get like 2 freaking like bush lights and smash them. and get
Stone
ready.
Cold Steve Austin.
Oh yeah, I'm coming out to I'm coming out to Real American, like from the Hulk Hogan
song, yeah.
fucking song, and I'm gonna cut a hole in my shirt, rip it
Hell
off before
yeah,
I get.
man.
I'm gonna have
that'd be
fun with
fun.
it.
Josh. I think we need to go
Okay.
try to plan a trip and document your whole trip.
Oh hell yeah!
Document the journey, yeah. That would be sick.
We'll talk about it.
I think I've been
We'll talk
to
about it
I think I've been
Okay,
to
fair
Des Moines once.
Let's go.
Real quick, I wanted to can I ask you something about, I mustache you a question.
Okay.
One.
Shave it for later.
That's the best response I've ever heard. I've never heard that.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
I've never heard that response. Ever.
Okay. Well, it's a good one.
Fuck you. I
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay, so there is a long history of great fighters in the UFC who have also been champions that hail from the University of Missouri.
It's true.
Obviously, the dumbest question and dumbest answer would be, would you like to be the next champion? Of course. But where does
Absolutely.
that play any kind of place in your mind where, like, hey, I kind of do come from, you got your Tyron Woodleys, you got your Ben Askrens, you got your Mikey Englands. I mean, you got your Michael Chandlers now in the UFC. He was Bellator champ at one point. Like,
Jaden
you got
Cox.
these guys. I would say that Mizzou holds the most belts besides. And this should have been a trivia question that we should have played later.
Oh, we'll get to that very soon.
Is this wait? Am I gonna ruin one if I do this now?
No.
I was gonna say because I would say Mizzou has the most champions of any college in the UFC. If we're looking at this like a college standpoint,
I think the actual answer to that would be Okie State, Oklahoma State. So they have Johnny Hendricks.
okay.
I
They
know
have
him.
Daniel Cormier.
I know him.
They have Randy Couture.
I know him.
They shoot right there. I think
three.
that
Well, that's like
But
DC's got
but
2
Mizzou
belts.
also
DC's
has-
got like 7 belts,
well, I
actually.
guess Mizzou has 2 technically, and then 3 champions. So Mizzou has 1 with Woodley. Ben is a Bellator and one championships champion, and then Michael Chandler's a Bellator champion. So I guess UFC belts, you're right. It would be Okie State with strictly UFC belts. But I would also say the other one is surprising college, in my opinion, would be Iowa Central.
Oh, yeah. The
John
JUCO.
Jones Bones and Colby Covington.
Which
That's
is
2 deadly guys. So is it something about guys from the Midwest? Is it a wrestling thing? What is it about either of those 2 things that makes good fighters in the UFC or good champions, really?
I would say it's a wrestling thing. I would say it's a folk style wrestling thing, and I talk about this all the time. I think folk style is just tailor made for fighting. It's all about taking someone down and controlling them on the ground, and then on top of that, just to go through like the college is so ridiculous, and I didn't realize it until I got out of it and kind of like got thrown back into just normal people life. Because like when you're doing it, you're just doing it, and like all your friends,
that's just your life.
all your friends are doing it too. So it's just it seems normal. Then like you get out and you're like, man, that was kind of crazy. Like, and like they just overtrain so bad, and like because like the mindset is everything that you do is to win a national title, and so nationals is the pinnacle, and that's what every year, that's the only thing people care about and everything. And so then like both universities I went to, this was always the mindset. Like you get hurt, you get sick or whatever, and it's not, oh, I can't practice today. It's like, no, you're practicing today. Because it's like, what if this happened at nationals? Would you just not wrestle?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, I would. And they're like, so you need to learn how to wrestle through it right now. And so it's like, so you get guys just broke, like, now I'm exaggerating a little, but like broken backs, broken shoulders, just broken bodies, and they're just grinding it out and like doing everything they can just to like, to be a functioning person, and they're somehow can pull it together and get in and practice, and I think just that, and then it's like you only have 4 years to accomplish your goals, so you're on like a limited time thing, so
it's countdown.
So it's like there's this like paranoia that your opponent is outworking you and like beating you in this race, and so you fit everything you can in these 4 years and then you're done. But it's like I think just that pressure and intensity creates diamonds,
Yeah.
And I think that's
breaks pipes and it makes diamonds.
I mean,
exactly.
I saw a stat. It's like the most UFC champions have their original basis was wrestling. It's like 18 or something. But yeah, I mean, we've covered it, a lot of it. You're a 4-1 professional fighter. I would like to just document it. Like what's your ultimate goal in the sport of MMA? What's your ideal scenario for Mikey England?
So I mean, obviously, I want to be like a UFC champ. Like that's what I want to do, and I always have thought, and I felt like I kind of failed as a college wrestler. Like I didn't accomplish the goals that I wanted to, and I felt like I left like a lot of meat on the bone. I left things out on the table, and it just kind of like it took me to just kind of have a break and just sit back and kind of reflect on it. Yeah. And then like after I did that, I'm like, man, I know all the things that I could have did better. And then I started doing this. I'm like, this is your chance to redeem yourself. This is like, now you get to right all your wrongs and do it right. And almost every time I lost a wrestling match, in my head I'd be like, I'd beat that dude in a fight. So fuck him.
You always have that.
So that's just kind of how I think. But it's like I want to be a UFC champ, and it's and I'm kind of giving myself like a 5-year plan. And so I'm like, I'm gonna sprint and do everything I possibly can in the next 5 years. Like I'm gonna everything I possibly can. I don't want to leave any doubts. And then in 5 years, I'm gonna like look at, because I mean at that point I'm 30. I just turned 30. Gonna be 35. I'm like, then I'm like, I'm gonna assess things and be like, all right, is this dream still alive? Do I have a shot, or like where am I at? And I think 5 years though, because it's like obvious, because there's risk with this game as well. It's like, I mean, like look at Nate Diaz. Like you hear him talk, you're like, man, is that guy?
I think Nate was just born like that, dude.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
But I mean, like it's just like you see the wars that he's been in. The dude's tough as nails, but it's like, man, it's like that.
Every fight he goes out there and bleeds about a gallon of blood.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you only get one brain, your whole life. So
do they? I guess when you over at Glory, because I don't think they probably do this as an organization, because you kind of you obviously understand. You signed your name on the dotted line. You know what sport you're getting into. This isn't like, oh, I'm gonna go fight somebody. Oh wait, there's possible damages that could. No. Clearly, like that's well known. Do they do anything to like explain, like, hey, if you're feeling this way, let us know. If you're experiencing things outside of practice that you're like worried about, let us. Is there any type of like health kind of like protocol that they follow on, like, hey, if you get up and like forget what you're doing, maybe you should tell somebody that.
It's there's nothing like written down, or it's kind of all unwritten stuff, but there's been guys in the gym who like, especially like some young guys and stuff, who experience like maybe headaches or dizziness, and like they'll talk to like the older guys, like maybe Kraus or maybe High or someone, and then usually like they're like, hey, take a break for like a week or two, Then there's in my fight I got cracked pretty hard, and they're like, just sit out for like 2 weeks, just kind of let it. And so it's not like
I didn't say rub some dirt on it.
Get back in there, pussy. No, it's not nothing like written down, but that's what is cool about our gym. And I've never been to another gym, so I don't know, but I just kind of like take what other people coming from other gyms say, and they're like, you guys do have like a family atmosphere and stuff, and I know I do. As far like I genuinely care about all my teammates and stuff, and I think everyone, that's kind of like, it's a pretty unique situation, but I think it's really cool with our gym that everyone cares. And so it's like anytime like especially like the more experienced guys, like we try to take care of everyone, and like hey man, like you might want to take a break for
I mean, Kraus I truly believe Kraus is one of the best in the game. So, and he's not just like one of the best coaches, super diligent about everything, like weight cutting to how you're feeling to your mental state. Like I really feel like he is all about 100% of that, which makes him one of the best in the game. And that goes to like your support system. How much does that mean to you? With this dream, this goal that you're trying to accomplish, what does your support system mean for just backing you and supporting you in pretty much anything?
It's cool. Like I was saying, everyone. One, it's like in the gym, it's like there's kind of this balance you have to have between like taking care of your partners, but also training to win a fight. Like there has to be a certain level of intensity in practice that kind of matches a fight speed to have you ready for a fight. But at the same time, it's like you can't actually just go fist fight each other.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're going to get hurt and you're not even going to make it to the fight, You're not even getting paid for that. So it's like there's kind of this balance between, one, taking care of your partners, but also it's like making sure you're getting the work that you need to be the best fighter you can possibly be.
Every day.
And that's what we actually interviewed Josh Fremd from LFA.
Oh, yeah, Factory X guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was it was right before his championship bout against Rodriguez.
Gregory Rodriguez. Yeah. Rodriguez. They always say the R's are H's. Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yeah.
Fajeda.
But he kind of said the same thing, because he broke his orbital in like sparring. Like they were sparring each other. So I've always kind of been curious about where that line is between aggression and practice and like actually training to train, and not just training to get through the motions of it and like keep each other safe. So I've always been curious, I'm assuming it's different with every guy you train with. This guy might be a little less, or this guy might go a little bit more aggressive, so I got to put up a little bit more of a guard. Or, do you have a guy that you like to train with more, or is it, do you kind of base it more off who your next opponent is?
So the only time I really like kind of make it like opponent specific is like handers versus right-handers.
Okay,
Like if so like if I got a guy who's left-handed, I'll go with like a couple of the guys who are also like lefties, and just to kind of like get used to the kind of, because it's a little bit different tactics, for an open stance versus like a closed stance.
Southpaw.
Well, it's like everything's, just from what I've heard, everything's reversed technically, isn't it?
Well, they're just kind of like, it's a little bit, so like if it's a right-hander versus a left-hander, they would call that open stance because you're both kind of facing out.
Yeah.
And so then you kind of shut down all your lead stuff, so then it kind of becomes like this power shot game.
Yeah.
Where with like a closed stance, like a right-hander versus a right-hander, it's a little bit more,
space is closer between the two.
and it's a little bit more like closed off, and then you kind of got to do a lot more front hand work to kind of open up your power shots and stuff. But I don't really get too crazy with like watching my opponents and stuff. And like I said, like I mean, like I had every single fight I've had like opponent changes,
Yeah,
so.
And that has to be so difficult, especially when you like kind of like you said, while you were training, you were like, hey, I'm going to fight here. The fight didn't happen. Hey, I'm going to train now even harder. The fight didn't happen that week either. Okay, I'm going to train for this guy. Now that guy can't fight. Like, it seems like you're in this almost revolving door of just mystery, and right around the corner, it's always just something changing.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the things where it's like control what you can control though.
Yeah.
And so it's like, obviously I can't control my opponent. I can't control like opponent change. So it's like, I'm just going to like come in and I'm going to do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like, I got some partners that like go. We always kind of talk about the plus equal minus rule. So it's like you got partners who are better than you, and you get a partner who's equal to you, and then you get someone who maybe isn't a little less, and not up to your skill level, And so then it's like you got someone who can really push you, like. One, it's like, maybe beat your ass a little bit. Sometimes you need that. Then you got someone who, like, you're extremely competitive with, and then you got someone who it's like, all right, it's like, I need to work on, like, these things because I'm not as good at these things. And it's like, you got this person that I can now, a live body, I can try this on and kind of work through it.
After your teammates see this interview, they're going to be like, well, which one am I? Am I the lesser? Am I the minus or the plus?
I mean, you make the minus guys better, and then the plus guys like make you better. It's a system that goes on.
It's a cycle, You gotta get a little bit of everything. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we talked about everything. I think it's.
Do you got any more to lay on them?
Nothing really, heavy to lay on. I'm just excited to see you back. Like excited for the future, and hopefully we keep making content and stuff like that. But I mean, if you guys want to stay tuned and watch the next video, it's gonna be some trivia between.
It's gonna be great.
Blake and Mikey And yeah, Mikey, 4-1 professional fighter, Iridium Sports Agency, everything, got a big fan base here in Kansas City. And he'll be back, you said around October is what you're hoping for. And then you got some wrestling things coming up. So it's all a lot of things on the horizon for this guy, and we'll stay tuned. So hopefully you enjoyed this interview with Mikey England.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, guys.
We appreciate it, Mikey. Thank you for joining us. We really hope you get back to here again. You've been our second person in studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a fucking
perfect.
blast. I hope you've had a good time.
Absolutely. I love this stuff.
Cool, man. Well, you guys can check this all out on our YouTube channel. And where can they find you on all the Instagrams and Facebooks and Twitter and all that?
Really, I just kind of do the Instagram.
Okay.
And it's funny because I made it back in like 2013 before I even knew Joe Rogan.
Oh.
I actually stole it from Jimi Hendrix, which he stole it from Jimi Hendrix too. But Mikey England EXP, like the Mikey England experience.
Oh, okay.
Mikey England EXP.
It is an experience.
And so I'm just on there, and I try to keep everybody updated with my fight stuff through there. And I do a little maniac mentality usually. I let people kind of know what I'm doing in training and stuff. And so yeah, go give me a follow.
Well, hell yeah. And what is it? You said it's
Mikey England EXP.
EXP. Well, there you go. Mikey, for Josh, for Blake, we appreciate you guys tuning in to Be Cut. Peace.